So a while ago, I made a video exposing a fake account, fake person who was pretending to be ex-CIA on Twitter. He went by the name Slandered Saint 2 on Twitter/X. And he joined conveniently on December 2023, so after October 7th, aka Al-Aqsa Flood. So I exposed this guy as being controlled opposition. And some time ago, I can't remember exactly when, his account was banned from Twitter. So it turns out that I was right all along. This guy was controlled opposition, but the question was, who was he working for? And I think at the time I was speculating that perhaps it was not an Israeli, but now I strongly believe that it was either an Israeli or perhaps a Jew from America that is working for the Israeli government. Basically, a Hasbara. I hate to call them Hasbara agents because they're just losers. They're basically mouth breeders, window lickers that live in their parents' basement, or in the case of Chebot, live in public housing and live off of welfare. And they get paid in Bitcoin to hide the transaction and the source of the money. So they use Bitcoin to pay people to spread disinformation and to harass and threaten people that criticize Israel. But what this Jewish supremacist was doing was very different than what I observed other Hasbara boys, I'll call them Hasbara boys instead, what other Hasbara boys were doing. What this loser was doing was it was pretending to be an ex-CIA agent. And I pointed out in this video that it's extremely strange for an ex-CIA person to speak out on these things anonymously because their credentials as an ex-CIA person is very important. And I remember discussing some very interesting things with this loser, this Jewish supremacist. And one of those things was he tried to give himself credibility by saying that Scott Ritter knew him. And that meant a lot to me because Scott Ritter was following him. But when I looked at Scott Ritter's account, it turns out he was following thousands of people and he probably wasn't vetting every single person he was following. He probably was duped as well. This guy was not ex CIA. And when I pressed this slandered saint fake account on the issue, he was very evasive. And I asked him straight up, does Scott Ritter know you in person? Does he know you personally? And Slandered Saint refused to answer the question. He kept on prevaricating. So obviously he was lying. And as you can see, he was banned because he was lying about who he really was. And what's interesting is what he was doing. So what he was doing was get he was trying to sanitize Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda of all things, which is very strange. He was trying to basically, say that history was unkind to them and that they were actually heroes and freedom fighters and stuff like that. And the other very interesting thing, the very conspicuous thing that he was doing was he was trying to insist that Israel was not involved in 9/11. That was extremely important to him. And it seemed like almost every single post he was trying to push the narrative that Israel was not behind 9/11 and that Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden were good people. So we now know that Al Qaeda and ISIS are actually murder syndicates created by Israel to murder their enemies abroad. And when I say enemies, I mean Western countries and Russia. That's actually what it is. And I'll make a whole video talking about that. I already did, talking about the Toyota trucks. Who bought the Toyota trucks for ISIS? It was Israel. But I'll make another video about that because there's more evidence that was released in the Epstein files, which definitively proves. I mean, like Al Jolani being the president of Syria, he is an Al Qaeda ISIS terrorist. a head chopper, and he became president of Syria because he was backed by the United States and Israel. Okay, Al Qaeda and ISIS are creations of Israel. They are murder syndicates to murder their enemies abroad. So it's strange, right? On one hand, he's what I remember one of his uh, favorite talking points was to he would wax poetic a lot, and that reminded me a lot of Adam Chebot-Goldman, a convicted felon that was sentenced to prison for a month for online harassment and had to pay big fines. I filed criminal charges against Adam Chebot-Goldman, and it was able to beat the charges because Israel was bankrolling it. It was paying its legal fees through a proxy, probably Beitar or perhaps the ADL. But when it went to prison this time, back in 2021, you can read it there. I'll post a link to this to the criminal record in the description. Uh, it had a public defender because it was harassing its own parents, and Israel was not going to get involved in a family dispute, but it would get involved in me because I'm exposing Jewish supremacists and their Hasbara boys, Hasbara agents, whatever you want to call them. They're saboteurs, they're traitors that are here in America that are white knighting for Israel and harassing and threatening and slandering people in the United States for criticizing this foreign country. And that was the thing that it had in common with Chibot is that it waxed poetic and it rambled a lot. Like it would post tweets that were like essays. And Chibot did that too. And it would ramble on and on using very flowery language that was voluminous but ultimately vacuous. It just was trying to sound smarter than it really was. It was very pretentious, a very pretentious way of speaking, and that's what stood out to me about this guy and why I believe, yeah, this guy. It's part of the reason why I believe that this guy is definitely either a Jew loyal to the foreign state of Israel or an Israeli. It doesn't really make much of a difference. They're both the same. It's just one's a traitor, one's a saboteur. But it was controlled opposition, and I remember the argument it made was that it would say Israel wants people to believe that Israel was behind 9/11. That's a weird thing to say. And you know what that reminded me of? It reminded me of how liberal Jews would say Israel and the ADL want anti Semitism. They want people to be anti Semitic because it forces people to move to Israel, which I made a whole video about that. And my conclusions are that's not true. It doesn't make any sense. So this seems to be like a weird talking point that Hasbara boys are using, because they are they have handlers which are basically instructing them on how to troll people, how to harass people, and in this case, how to sabotage people's way of thinking, to discourage a certain kind of narrative. So that is what this slandered saint guy was trying to do. He was trying to discredit the narrative that Israel was behind 9/11 and to get people to accept the official narrative, which I no longer believe. I haven't believed the official narrative of 9/11 for some time now. I can't remember when I finally woke up and saw the light, but I obviously don't believe it. And somewhat recently, Cenk Uygur announced on Twitter X that he no longer believes the official narrative of 9/11 either. It's so obvious that Israel was behind it. But that's a video for another time. Like, I'll just mention quickly the Dancing Israelis. Go look that up. But that's a video for on its own, and I don't really want to get too derailed on this issue. I just wanted to expose that time when Israel used someone to pretend was your friend, pretend that this was someone that was on our side and was waxing poetic and using very flourishy, flowery language to sound very important and try to use his fake credentials of being ex-CIA to lend credibility to his arguments when they ultimately held no weight. And I had to press this guy on that and point out to him, stop trying to use your credentials of supposedly being ex-CIA to give your arguments greater credibility. That's not how it works. What matters is the merit of the argument being made, not who makes the argument. And also, it doesn't help that he had an army of bots that vociferously protected him and would accuse other people of being bots and also accuse people of being retarded, if I remember correctly. It's all in this video. The language was very Chebot, very similar to that degenerate convicted criminal that sent child porn to Cedric Lutz and had the FBI raid his parents' house. So these are the kinds of degenerates that you're dealing with. People who are so unoriginal, who are so stupid that they can't even think of their own rhetoric and propaganda. They have to be fed these lies and this garbage and this manner of speaking even by Hasbara handlers. And they also need their legal fees paid for by Beitar or the ADL or some shell company, dummy corporation, wherever the fuck it is. And they're all loyal to a foreign country. And that's what this war in Iran is all about. It is a war to benefit the Jewish state. And the people pushing for it were Jews loyal to the foreign country of Israel. See you guys later.